Happy Halloween, everyone. Welcome back to either our last or our penultimate Scoobtober retrospective. I
Penultimate.
think that'll be up to you, Millie, won't it?
Penultimate.
So, our penultimate retrospective, but the last one that'll directly lead into a new interview. So, please stick around to the end of the video for that because it's a big banger. Everyone, the core four's there. We went to the tippity top of this list to see who we could get. So, really excited to announce that later on. But today we're going to be reviewing Happy Halloween Scooby Doo, which I'm looking forward to discuss. I think we were all going to have some very different opinions on this one, but I think that's why it's good to do these, because if we were all agreeing, I think it would be very, very dull. So, Millie, what was your first point of interest?
Okay, so let's work through the movie. So they're at Elvira's Halloween parade. That's the setting. Straight into the mystery, we see the Scarecrow pumpkin villain, which aesthetically I quite liked, but I did also just feel a little bit in shock so early on that it was like we're fully into this mystery, because I get it, and it's kind of like The Witch's Ghost where it's just they're wrapping up another mystery. But when you jump straight into it with characters that's going to be relevant, I kind of feel like we hit the ground running and had to play catch up a little bit. How did you feel heading into this movie, JayBee?
So it's an interesting one. Now, obviously, we've reviewed this before. I can't remember anything I said in that review. Like,
Same.
I kind of want to treat all of those old reviews as moot at this point, just because it was so long ago. So going into this one, I wasn't looking forward to it, and I think we kind of had some discussions behind the scenes that indicated that we may be in a kind of civil war incident when it came to this one. But actually, and this isn't really saying too great much, but like I did enjoy the start more than I remember enjoying it. I think the setting is pretty nice. I think all the floats are a good detail. You've got some Easter eggs in there. I'm overall not disliking this setup at first. Now, in terms of Elvira, I don't know anything about Elvira, to be honest. And I guess I know that that's a sin because I know that she's quite a popular character and everyone goes nuts when she's featured in a Scooby Doo thing, but I'm not too familiar with her as a character. And to be honest, I'm kind of a bit burnt out on the whole guest star crossover Scooby Doo thing just because we've had so many of them lately that. Yeah, it wasn't fantastic for me, but it wasn't awful either.
Okay, I must admit the design of the pumpkin scarecrow I did like. It almost reminded me of like the episode of What's New from Halloween as well. The stuff I enjoyed. Dan, how did you feel heading into this movie?
Yeah, well, today was the first time I'd rewatched it since it came out. That's like 2, 3 years now. Um, I had forgot that it just goes straight into the mystery. I did like it. I liked I thought it was suitably Halloweeny. Like I don't like it when something's set around Halloween or Christmas, but it doesn't feel like it feels incidental. So I liked how it had the parade and everything. Yeah, was it Elvira? I don't know much about her either, to be honest. And I can give or take. I don't hate her, but I don't love her. But yeah, I like the opening. I will admit, the film as a whole, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I did when I first watched it. I remember enjoying it a bit more than I did this time.
So we've like
But
reversed.
I
yeah,
completely agree with you on that. When we were
yeah,
discussing it at the end of the last review, I was like, I remember that bit. I remember liking that bit.
yeah.
And
So did
as
I.
we're
I'm
about
sure it
to
was
see, we're
positive.
running into a wall of stuff that maybe I like less
Definitely.
than I thought.
Yeah, that
So
that was pretty much my experience watching it again. I was like, oh, this wasn't as great as I remembered.
yeah, okay. That's interesting that we both had that same reaction. Okay. And I'm gonna see how gently we head into this. But Sophie, what was your thoughts on just the initial intro that Elvira's gonna be in there? We've got a Halloween parade.
I'm going to start off really positive. I think with a special like Halloween, I get excited. One off, one of a kind. Um, I'm starting off positive, I promise you. I like the setting. I did get a lot of Halloween vibes from it. I think the color palette, like the whole Halloween, I think it all like really felt Halloweeny to me. Like you said, the design of the pumpkin monster, he went good. I'm trying to be really positive because I know what's coming up. I think overall, I did enjoy the beginning of it. I don't know much about Elvira, but for a special to invite a guest on, I think she kind of fit the Halloween vibe, you know, the best out of any other guest you could have on. So with that being said, I'll leave it as that for now.
Okay, so one of the next bits I do want to get into though is the characterization of the gang, the animation. I feel like we get into this quite early on, but before that, what did we all think to the titles? Feel free to just kind of throw your thoughts out there. But for me, the song kind of seemed out of place. It was so relaxed. Yet this is meant to be a scary Halloween special, and it couldn't have been any slower paced. Anyone notice that, or is it just me being like completely super critical?
Interesting one. I think this is a hot take because I actually do massively respect this person's work, and I've got no reason to dislike them.
Gosh.
But I think, again, this isn't the last movie he's worked on. But I think Andy Sturmer's almost overstayed his welcome on these Scooby Doo DTVs because, like, he does great stuff, and even the one he did for Scooby Doo and Crypto 2 was one of my favorite ones, you know, that he's done recently. I just feel like it's always the same vibe, and I get what it's trying to do. I think it's trying to recapture that whole, you know, the 7 days a week vibe of like the older 1969 original series. But I just feel like it always just turns into some type of pop fest that is a very one note, like it's always one tone. And I think for certain movies, that just isn't the way to go. So unless there's some type of adaptability from his general work and tone, I do feel like he's overstayed his welcome a bit. And see, I felt very cynical towards the music, and I don't know why this time. But even Robert J. Crowell, beyond the Mystery Incorporated, you know, let's wrap up the mystery song, which is iconic, and I do want that to stay. I feel like that's the only reason why he's around as the composer for that piece, which is a banger. It's just, I don't think the music landed like it should have done for a Halloween special with this one.
I do see what you're saying with that. It's almost like they only have 3 notes to play with, because it just seemed very slow and kind of thing. Like there was no, like when you jump into a mystery that quickly, you want the music to replicate it, almost like I'm thinking the What's New Scooby Doo intro song. That's fast paced. You know you're jumping into something, and it gets you on that level with it. Whereas this story is trying to get you on a level, and I just think the music kind of drags it down. One of the songs that it kind of reminded me of, and I don't know why, is, you know, in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, when it's like when you've catched and unmasked that villain and it's Fred's sad song. It reminded me of that almost in a way, like there was this kind of depressed tone to it. It just didn't seem to fit.
Like the parody.
Yeah, just that kind of really slow, everybody's sad sort of feel. Sophie, and was preparing for a few insults to be thrown. I don't know if you were like ready for it this early on, but did you like the song? Did you not like the song? Were you kind of indifferent to it?
I am for this part 50-50. It's not horrific. It, you know, it is quite, I don't know if I like it or not. That's the problem. I don't know if I like, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's really slow paced. But as a song for the titles itself, I don't know if I like it or not. Like, it's quite a catchy tune. Like, you can be playing it in your head, but I don't know if I like it. I think just the titles and like even what was going on with the gang, like you said, it was really slow paced. And that kind of lost my interest, and that was before it even started, sort of thing. So yeah, I take what you're getting. Yeah, I think I agree.
Okay. And Dan, how about you? Did you pick up on the song kind of been anything different, or?
Yeah, no, I think in terms of what was happening on screen, I found it quite creative. I liked how they had they found a way for each of the gang to appear as the actors' names, including obviously Scooby and Fred appearing at the same time. So I thought that was quite good. But yeah, the song, could have sort of upped the pace a little bit. I do agree with you on that one.
Okay. The next thing I want to say is perhaps quite a bold statement. So I'm more than happy for everyone to kind of jump in and like completely speak over me here. But I feel like they make the characters very strong very quickly. And you almost know you've done something wrong when Velma's the least annoying character. I know we're all quite Daphne fans. And for me, this is like, I know people have issues with Be Cool characterizations and it's a very split series. To me, this was that, but like on incredible amounts of steroids. This was that and over the top and more. Like Daphne's line of "Are you serial?" That just got me at the start, and from there I was like, "This is horrific." Like her trying to get to record the villain saying the meddling kids line. There's a scene where she's speaking over Velma, and I'm actually thinking, please let Velma speak. I'm gonna say, and this is a bold statement because I know we all are Daphne fans, this is the worst iteration of Daphne we've ever seen. That's my thoughts.
That is controversial.
Like, that's one of, other than like Daphne and Velma and like the puppet Daphne maybe, but for me, like, the level of annoyance surpasses Velma within like 2 minutes of this movie. And that's something I had a bit of an issue with, and I'd completely forgotten. Like, I was going into this movie ready to watch it and enjoy it. I was like, how did I forget that this would irritate me that badly? But I realized that's quite a bold statement, and JayBee pulled a serious sort of a face. So do you want to tell me what I've just said that's so like
No, I get what you're
bad?
saying. It is a very different Daphne, very, very like much on the wavelength of Be Cool, which I know that I think even some of us here have a problem with that. But I liked it. Like, I didn't think it was necessary. I'd rather a more straightforward Daphne for these things. But at the same time, I think Gray does a good enough job with it that I'm not annoyed by it. Like, I do think it's a bit of time wasting, and it just adds onto the runtime. It's not really going anywhere. It's just, it is what it is. It's a bit of padding. But I think Gray makes it charming and charismatic enough for me to go through it, because it isn't jarring. Like, I actually do like the work of Kate Micucci and Velma in this movie, because I feel like the direction often with her is a bit inconsistent. Whereas with this, maybe the writing is slightly off with this version of Daphne, but I think the performance is so comfortable and confident that I go through it. I'm almost wondering if, because I know, say, director Maxwell Atoms worked quite closely with Gray doing Billy and Mandy. I don't know if maybe he felt more confident to just go to Gray, right, maybe up the ante with this, or be as wacky and irreverent as you feel like you need to be. And so there was more of a familiarity there and less of a, of a sense of control. Maybe that's why. But I thought the performance was good enough to not make it annoying for me.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I have to agree with you. This isn't on Grey at all. Grey's fantastic. When I say this is the worst iteration of Daphne, I mean the worst written.
I mean, that's a wild
possibly.
statement, I think. But I kind of, I mean, what? No, it's a wild statement. It's a wild statement.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Sophie because I know she's a Daphne fan. What's your thoughts on this? Am I like completely wrong? Is JayBee a bit more accurate and a bit more of an unbiased take?
Unbiased?
I'm not unbiased, but like certainly trying to find a bit of a middle ground.
I don't know.
As you know, Daphne's my favourite character. I love her. Does this play a part as to another reason why I don't like the movie? Yes, probably it does. I love Be Cool Scooby Doo. Daphne's a bit quirky in it, but it's Be Cool Scooby Doo. It's funny. I'll take it. But in a direct-to-video and all the other iterations in like this bracket, she's very, very obnoxious in this movie, and she is really annoying. And the amount of times I've cringed watching her in this movie, I'm like, that's not Daphne. Like we say, it's not great. It's how she's been written in this movie, and no, I can't stomach it. That's like you say, it's in that she doesn't stop. She keeps going all the up, and we'll get to it, like the bird scene as well, which we'll get to it. But no, I can't even like contain my frustration about it. Like, Daphne's my favorite character, and they've just like done her wrong in this movie.
Yeah, I genuinely, from the first line, like, "Are you serial?" I was done. It was like it wasn't Daphne to me, but I almost feel like they're overcompensating because of what happened with the Goblin King, where they didn't get any lines, and then it was like, okay, in this one, we're giving them more airtime than we're giving Shaggy and Scooby. I'm sure Scooby was probably like the least featured member of the gang in this. It was insane. Dan, how did you feel about the kind of character representations and stuff in this movie?
Yeah, well, in terms of Daphne, I think I'm sort of in the middle. I remember when I first I reviewed this back in 2020 when it came out, and I did point out at the time, I was like, it's clearly inspired by Be Cool Daphne. I didn't mind it as such. It doesn't. I'll agree. It doesn't really. It's a bit more jarring here because, like, with Be Cool, it's the whole show is comedic. The whole show is sort of exaggerated, so it does sort of, especially as this is meant to be like sort of linked into the other two, like a sort of trilogy, and she didn't act that way in the other two. So this, it really does stand out. But I didn't mind it so much. I think as well, even just the whole thing with her trying to be Elvira, that felt like, you know, in Be Cool, where Daphne's doing something stupid each week. It felt like they were kind of trying to emulate that. But they tried it. It kind of worked, but yeah, I could do without it, to be fair, in future.
Right. I think that was really interesting. So moving on from the characterization bits, and obviously, you know, that mystery's kind of concluded, the villain's arrested, taken away. We then move on to kind of like you're meant to understand this isn't normal and this mystery's continuing sort of thing, where Shaggy and Scooby go exploring and they find like drones and stuff. And I think they use candy to shoot them down. JayBee, I'm like leaning on you here to like tell me I'm getting this right.
Is this the section, and you can tell me if I'm jumping the gun, where we get the sequence where you've got Shaggy and Scooby going down into that ditch and we see the toxic waste going into the pumpkin? See, now, I don't know what everyone else thinks about this, but I actually love this little sequence. And I think this is the part where I start to like the music. It's very generic, you know, but I do like what it does in the scene alone, because it's a bit of like that Stranger Things synth vibe where it just seems a bit almost extraterrestrial in nature, and then the pan over to the pumpkins. I think in a vacuum, this is one of the best scenes in the movie, because it's just, I don't know, it just feels so what I was expecting from this type of movie. You've got creator of Billy and Mandy doing a Halloween special. All this, I think, is perfect from the setup. The drone is a little bit, I mean, it kind of gives away the game a bit too early in a way.
I
like the scene.
I'm almost disappointed that it was a drone, because when I saw these pumpkins come to life, I was in Witch's Ghost. It's like, oh, this is real. Like, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be another one where it's real. And I was really disappointed that it wasn't, to be quite honest. What about you, Dan? Did you kind of enjoy perhaps what this was setting up? Did you kind of lean towards there when you saw the pumpkins that maybe this is real, or did you like the drone reveal? Or...
Well, I did not for a minute think it was going to be real, just simply because obviously this film followed the likes of Zombie Island and 13th Ghost, so I knew there was no way they were going to go there, unfortunately. But I quite liked it simply because I like sort of, when it's a Halloween special, I wanted to feel Halloweeny, and like the pumpkins feel very Halloweeny. So I quite like that. And you know, they didn't just have a generic villain, it was like actual like jack-o'-lanterns. So no, I like that part. I didn't mind the sequence. I think the beginning bit of the whole film is a lot stronger than where it goes. Like about, you know, after the first section, I didn't realize it when I first watched it a few years ago, but this time I realized it kind of goes just completely downhill. But the beginning I quite enjoyed.
Almost like, and we'll get onto it, but it goes on to almost remind me of like a Scooby version of Fast and Furious for half an hour, where there's a car chase, and there is literally the scene in Fast and Furious, because I've seen it, where they break into a moving bus. It was kind of like, okay, this is that, but not done as well, maybe. But we'll get onto that anyway. So, Sophie, what was your thoughts on the pumpkin scene and the drones?
I have to agree with JayBee. I think probably the best part of the movie, I think just how it went and how the setup, the atmosphere created is really eerie and like kind of perfect for like a Halloween setting. I just think the execution was like spot on, like it's got a good pace. I kind of like when, you know, when they're then thrown in and they find out about it. That's kind of like the only like part where they kind of bumped into anything scary to some degree. At the time of the movie and still today, the drones, you know, what else were you going to expect kind of thing from Warner Brothers? But I think definitely one of the standout parts of the movie, that's my favourite. But there's not many, let's just point that out.
I mean, I must say, there is a part in this that's my favourite bit as well. You know, where Shaggy and Scooby are shooting the candy to take down the drones? I think that was animated particularly well. I did like that. But I think from here onwards, for a good 5 minutes, there's a very, like, almost like a fight to be the one in front of the camera. So you get Velma trying to explain something as Daphne starts speaking over her. Then Fred comes to speak over them. And then there's this weird bit that I personally don't get, where Shaggy and Scooby chew up candy and go as melted candy for Halloween. And Velma's like, oh, this is a fantastic idea. And all that bit, to me, is just confusing as anything. Like, I can't take anything out of that bit. How did you all feel?
Yeah, I thought the Halloween costume that you say, the chewed up sweets, I thought was disgusting. I didn't like that. It seemed like it was there for the whole film as well.
Yeah.
That they just had all these like sweet wrappers attached to them. No, ugh.
No. Sophie.
Got nothing. Got nothing on the subject. No.
JayBee.
So here's the thing, I actually quite like it. I think for Shaggy and Scooby, it's quite inventive, especially on the fly. And I think for a Halloween special, having that element of trick or treat there is actually a good thing. The part where I think it's bad, and speaking of trick or treat, I'm going to take a leaf out of Trick or Treat's book here. When you're doing something that's a bit Halloweeny, that's meant to just set up the setting of the time period, I think they did it right, where it wasn't taking away from the momentum of a mystery. It was, okay, so this is wrapped up, we're kind of in a slump. Oh, it's trick or treating time. Let's have like a funny montage, but it's just Shaggy and Scooby's dream. It sets up what they want to do throughout the movie, and it takes up like a 10-second montage before anything's even really started. Whereas this, we get a cold open that's not really a cold open, then there's some shenanigans, then there's a good setup, but then instead of springboarding from that good setup, then they're like, oh, well, let's do some quirky Halloween stuff now. And I think it's a lot more drawn out than that little montage dream sequence from Trick or Treat. So I think it was a good scene. I did enjoy it, even though it was a bit grim. I just think it was at the wrong time. Maybe they should have done it even at the start. But yeah, having that cool pumpkin setup and then just let's make a disgusting costume, I think it kind of killed the momentum a little bit.
Yeah. And for me, that awful costume does lead to one of Daphne's only redeeming moments, which is kind of helping Shaggy and Scooby, especially after Velma's just basically banished them to the mystery machine. Like, this is one of the things I'm kind of saying about this movie, is that Shaggy and Scooby just are not in it, in a way. Like, to go from the Goblin King, because if we go through the way that we've actually watched these, you have Goblin King and then you have this. It's complete role reversal. Like, have we ever seen a movie where like someone tells Shaggy and Scooby to get out of there like they're the main character?
See, but
Velma's never been the main character. She's not one to tell Shaggy and Scooby that she doesn't want to see their face and to get out.
Well, I wasn't not on Velma's side in that. Like, I think the way she came across was a little bit abrasive, but overall, I think that maybe they added a bit more schmuck into Shaggy and Scooby to elevate, because I think really the two mains in this are Daphne and Velma, because they get like the story arc. But yeah, I wasn't against Velma in this. It was just odd to have that be the tone.
Yeah.
Almost argumentative.
I was against how she said it, but I have to agree with you. This is one of the only movies where I'm not against Velma. There's moments later on when I'm like, oh yeah, that's Velma, not ugh. Like, normally when I hear Velma's voice, I'm a bit like, ugh. But no, with this, I was kind of there, which is strange. But Sophie, for you, was this nice moment between Daphne and Shaggy and Scooby redeeming? Or did it make it worse?
Was this the owl scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did bring up earlier. Was it redeeming? Yes, without any dialogue. But there was a lot of dialogue and a lot of singing, and that was questionable. So if you watch it on mute and silent, yeah, brilliant scene, really cute, adorable. If you have the sound turn up, no.
It kind of reminded me.
It's a really nice scene, and it's really cute, and I love like Daphne like kind of being like the mother hen, like looking after them all, like making sure everybody's okay. But yeah, she started singing, then it went like again, it's not Grace's fault. It's just like her being written like this. But no.
You see, it was like a really weird version of Snow White. Like, she's singing as she's cleaning. There's some birds that's meant to be flying around that's like just stuck to people. It just, I don't know, it was so strange. I think it's meant to be sweet, but I just don't know, as with a lot of this, if the good intentions came across right. Dan, how did you feel about this scene?
Yeah, it was quite sweet. I wouldn't go as far as to say redeeming, but yeah, it was fine. Out of everything else in the film, it didn't irritate me as much as stuff later on. It was, again, just, I don't know, this entire film, when I rewatched it, it felt like different writers had wrote different scenes. Because it's like, just the characters, especially Daphne and Velma, they're just within each scene just seem to go like we said about Daphne earlier, it feels like Be Cool Daphne at certain moments, and other times it doesn't. It just feels like different writers were just writing them. So yeah, I felt like I had whiplash watching it. But this scene, yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you on the whiplash thing. It does seem to move around so quickly until they get in the cars, and then it sticks in the same place for a very prolonged amount of time. And okay, so with that in mind, something's happened to the mystery machine. What was it? A pumpkin fell on it, or I don't actually remember.
Some nonsense happened.
Yeah, I
didn't
can't
it?
remember.
Happened to it, which basically meant that Bill Nye had to send them a new mystery machine. And to me, kind of what I'm getting with this is they were maybe told who the villain had to be, and there was 2 guests that they'd promised a slot to, and the writers had to try and do what they could with that. Because I don't see how Bill Nye fit into this. What about you? You keep saying Bill Nye the Science Guy just for
Yeah, it's
fun.
Bill Nye the Science. To me, though, this is crap. Like, no, it's just too random. I understand it's fun and it's quirky. It's just, I think they knew what they wanted the storyline to be, and instead of having us get there naturally, it was, well, what will make this more effective? What will make this easier? Oh, there's going to be a big car chase later. Let's find some way to make the mystery machine some type of super techno thing that can do what we want it to do in this thing that we've planned out, or this idea that we've had for later on in the movie. And there's ways to do it. I don't think this was the worst way they could have gone, but it was just, why do we have to change so much? Oh, and I sound like a purist now, and I'm actually famously anti-purist, but I'm going to sound like a purist. Why do we have to change so much about the original designs? And it doesn't even look interesting. It's just bland scientific stuff for the sake of scientific stuff. And I have heard of Bill Nye the Science Guy, obviously. I don't even know where from, but it's like, I don't think he's so iconic that it was worth, let's change this design. And I don't know. And for him not to appear really in person, I get why, but then why have we got some Iron Man Jarvis interface with the mystery machine? It's just, I think it's just too much going on. It's all over the girth.
To me, like you say, everything's just about how do we get to the end result. And I think it's kind of like, we need to fit this guest in. We need a way for Velma to get from the mystery machine onto the bus, and we need something to give Fred some character.
Like, if they were to mix and mash it, like if Elvira was more involved and she like gave the mystery machine the Trevor Gloom treatment, and there was like a cannon on top of the mystery machine that shoots like bats out that will attack the pumpkins, okay, fine, I can deal with that to an extent because it fits into the Elvira thing. It gives the mystery machine a Halloween makeover, and they can still do all the techno stuff. It's all right. But then to have Bill Nye the Science Guy come in and turn the mystery machine into Iron Man in the same movie as that, it's just, I don't know.
Dan, were you happy to see Bill Nye the Science Guy?
I'd remember that Elvira was in this movie. I'd completely forgotten that Bill Nye the
Yeah.
Science Guy was in it. I have no idea who he is. But to be fair, a lot of times when the Scooby guest stars come on, I don't know who they are. But it seemed random. It seemed out of place. One thing that irritated me as well, the whole mystery machine thing. Because I know they got rid of it in the 13th Ghost, had they just brought it back in Return to Zombie Island, I wouldn't have even thought about it. But they made such a big thing that the mystery machine was still gone, that they'd lost it. And it was just back in this film. And yet this film was supposed to be continuing on. So that was a bit like, I'd like to sit through Return to Zombie Island. You could at least give me some continuity. But yeah, the Bill Nye thing, I didn't get it. I didn't like it. Like JayBee said, it felt like Jarvis from Marvel. I don't know. I didn't
Mystery
like
Machine
how he kept.
X.
Yeah, this was.
Like,
Oh
at
God,
least
it
get
reminds me of.
Elon Musk and make it a bit of a meme or something. Like,
Oh, honestly, it just. I totally forgot that was even in the film. So when I was watching, I didn't like it. He kept popping up in like a hologram. And yeah, I didn't know. It was probably my least favorite aspect of the film because it just felt out of place. It feels as though the studio said, "Oh, could everybody put forward some ideas?" And then they just used them all and just
Yeah,
found ways to sort of link them together. Like,
I
yeah,
think
this will all do.
I think it's very much like you were saying, where it almost feels like different bits were done separately and then it all got thrown together at the end. It's almost like that too many cooks spoil the broth sort of saying. Like, it did just seem like there were too many things involved here. It seemed like there was a clear parameter set for the writers, and they had to do their best to mold all this stuff together that just didn't go together. Like, all the wrong ingredients that maybe are nice on their own, but all crammed into one space. Sophie, how did you feel about Bill Nye?
First of all, petition to stop blowing up and damaging the mystery machine. I'm like generally heartbroken when it gets destroyed. I'm like, what is the point? Yes, it's like the main members mystery, but I kind of also class the mystery machine as part of the gang as well. So that's like heartbreaking. Back to Bill Nye. The most random thing to come out of this movie. Like I said, Elvira, she like fits the theme, like all like spooky, like Halloweeny. Like you say, Bill Nye the Science Guy. Are there going to be any aliens, like some wacky Halloween aliens coming out? Because there wasn't. I don't know what science you've got to do with pumpkins either. Just so random. Like, I remember like when it came on, I'm just like, what's happened now? Like, we were at the beginning and then this happened. And I'm like, have I been like watching the same thing, or did like half of a different movie like cut in front of it, sort of thing? And like you say, like Dan said, it feels like it's been written by different people and like kind of like mashed together at the end and just hope for the best, which it didn't turn out.
There certainly is an air to it of like, they did the first two movies knowing what they were going to do, and this one was rushed, it was forgotten about, and it was a case of we need to get as many people on this as we can to get it out the door. It's kind of the feel that I think it gets, and we'll get a little bit more into how this all like fits together and the continuity, how the movie progresses, because then we get our next kind of burst of randomness that doesn't fit anywhere, which is Daphne's sudden obsession with Elvira to be Elvira. It kind of doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense other than to serve as a plot of, great, she's coming with them, like Elvira's coming with them, and there's another car to make it look a bit more dramatic. Other than that, I don't get it. JayBee, how do you feel about Daphne's, again, perhaps like that Be Cool thing, just Daphne's got these obsessions, but in Be Cool it made a bit of sense, whereas here it's just not replicated right.
Look, as I say, I think Elvira was a good a good addition, shall we say, in terms of being on theme. Even though, again, I could do without the crossovers. I think I'm kind of in love with my idea of just Elvira doing what Trevor Gloom did to the Mystery Machine in this, but it just has all the technology on board. I think that would have been something for Elvira to do. Maybe she could have been the one equipping all these things and using it while they're on the road versus this sub story. Because I think that they almost did this sub story because what could Elvira do on the trip? Like, maybe she could sit there and make quirky comments or whatnot, but without some type of thing interacting with her or for her to interact with. She's just kind of there. It actually is a massive shame that they decided to have two guest stars, both with pretty minimal stuff to do, but I, I don't mind it, but also I don't like it from two aspects. One, because again, there's a better use for Elvira, I think. But two, I think whether or not, obviously we're older people in terms of the demographic for Scooby, but in terms of kids, I think it almost trivializes something pseudo serious about like being an obsessed fan. Like, obviously, I'm not going, oh, this is bad moral messaging, this is awful, but it does kind of trivialize that a little bit. It's like, almost like misery in a way. It's like that type of thing going on. So yeah, I don't think it was particularly great messaging, and it just went nowhere really. So yeah, just wasted opportunities.
What about you, Dan? Did you see Elvira's place at this point? Do you think she should have just perhaps done the parade and gone sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Because at first I thought that's all it was going to be. Because I know she made a cameo in Return to Zombie Island where she was just like on the TV for the competition. I thought it was going to be something similar. So when she kept sticking around, I was like, why? And then, yeah, it just felt like they were trying to emulate Be Cool. It was like, oh, she has to have a Daphneism, and this time it's becoming Elvira. I don't think it had a very good conclusion either. It just felt so. It was felt like, oh well, we've paid for, I don't know what her real name is, Cassandra Peterson, I think it is. Like, oh, we're paying for her to be on it. We may as well think of a plot, and they couldn't think of anything, so it was, oh, Daphne wants to be her. And then they say at the end, they say at one point that they're not surprised because, oh, Daphne's done this before, and it just makes her look a bit like a lunatic, to be fair.
Like some type of like Joe Goldberg.
Like if my friend was doing that, if my friend was constantly pretending to be celebrities, I think I'd have a word with them. I'd be like, look, you need to stop this now.
Yeah,
Especially if the
it's
celebrity
too
was
far.
there.
It's just so strange. I don't get what they're trying to do to Daphne, but this is like ruining to her character. Like, to come away from this seeing Velma as the best one, like how could it have gone so wrong so quickly?
Then again, I was trying to do an Australian accent for like 2 weeks after Neil Fanning, so maybe I can't talk.
No. I will admit, through everything we're saying, I'm waiting for Sophie's reaction. Like, I just keep watching, waiting to see like at what point she fully snaps and says her thoughts on this movie. Are we there
I
yet?
think I've been harsher so far, even though I've not been. It's weird. It's weird.
No, we've been pretty
I'm
harsh. and
holding my
Sophie's-
tongue because the people that we spoke to on this movie, like they're real genuine people and have put their heart into it, and it's so interesting to hear how it's like come about, but the end result is just not there. But you wait till the end of my final thoughts and I'll really rip into it.
Okay.
The Daphne and Elvira situation. Again, so I mean, I love what Dan said. That made me laugh so much. It's just such a random, non-existent story that doesn't need to be there. It's such like a filler for the movie. I mean, we know there's a major filler coming up, which we'll get to that like soon enough. But it's so random. She wasn't as obnoxious and annoying like speaking. Daphne, I thought like they toned her down a wee bit more than the beginning. Like we said before, it's like two different people are writing her. But yeah, overall, it was just like a waste of time. It's like it's not going anywhere. It's such a random thing again. Like there's so many random, like useless parts in this movie that they can just piece together for some reason.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like you said, we are getting onto a massive filler, and that is as soon as the ground rips apart, they're in the cars and they stay there for a very, 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 very long time. And they don't try to do much to keep it interesting. Like, they start shouting between windows. Like, it's like a motorway that they're on, right? They must be moving extremely quickly. Like, when we drove up to the Comic-Con, we couldn't have put our windows down and started shouting into Sophie's car. She wouldn't have heard a word we were saying because there would have been so much air resistance. It's ridiculous. And they just do this for half an hour at least, just shouting from car to car. And I think it's when we're watching this scene that, for me, this could have made a really good episode of something. There's enough there that you could have condensed it down, got rid of all the weird tangents and sidelines, and maybe this could have made an episode. But for me, this car scene, they just keep dragging it on and dragging it on to get it to a movie. And as I was kind of alluding to, I quite like Fast and Furious, I will admit. And there is just some parts of this that it's like, what everybody complains about that for, and what it's been known for in a few of the more recent movies that have been reviewed less well, is they just stay in the cars for too long. There's this threat that's just following them, getting closer and closer and closer for so long. And then there is an exact scene where somebody in Fast and Furious jumps onto a bus to try and speak to somebody that is held captive in said bus, and they do pretty much exactly the same thing, except they fly Velma into a room that's like, have you seen the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock? There's like a room that his sister's in that's exactly like that. They've made her Sherlock talking about a mind palace. And I think it's maybe that makes her likable, because I quite like that series and I'm drawing like parallels from that. But it was just so strange. And how big was that room considering it was meant to be in a bus? Like, this is all just so weird. JayBee, how did you feel about that scene all the way up from this extremely long car chase to Velma being Sherlock?
I mean, the car stuff to me was just kind of trash, but that's because I've got no interest in cars. I don't drive, and when I do drive, I'm not gonna like it. Like cars are just like they're just like big wheelchairs, aren't they? They're just things you sit in them and they take you somewhere. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just a thing. It bores me. So yeah, car stuff not interested in, but I did like the dynamic between Velma and Crane. Are we getting to that? Are we not there
We
yet?
are. I like Crane, I do.
Well, I just think it's fascinating because I do think they both stay quite consistent within this movie, at least alone. And I thought it was fascinating that we have Crane on one hand, who is a pure agent of chaos, and Velma, who is a pure agent of logic. And yet somehow they're both bound behind him being so set within his ways and her being so set within hers that they, I think he's right. He calls it quite early on. They both are within the same trap. And I thought that was fascinating. I think if they spent less time on the road, maybe if this was part of a series, they could have really built up a very well written, which I do think some of these scenes were, Sherlock and Moriarty dynamic. It almost did feel like Batman meeting the Joker. I think those two are excellent together. It's just, again, all that fluff within the car stuff is just, maybe we could have done with less Bill Nye the Science Guy having his Charles Xavier chair floating about and a bit more of this dialogue going on. But yeah.
See, I'd say aside from maybe Coco, that's one of my favorite Velma interactions that we've possibly ever seen. I get what they wanted to do there. There's some glimmers of good concept here that in different contexts would have been great. It's maybe just how they were all put together. Dan, how did you feel about that whole sequence from getting in the cars to the Sherlock Moriarty moment?
Well, honestly, before we watched it, one of the only things I really remembered about the film was that. Because I remember at the time when I first watched it thinking, why is this still going on? Like a car chase scene and all that. It usually takes about 2 minutes. I think it can work. I do like the Fast and the Furious movies. And I think something like that can be funny. Like I think if you've ever watched The Simpsons where he meets Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, and at the end there's like a really funny chase scene in the cars in the van. But this just goes on, and it felt like a bit like the Wacky Races in a way. And I didn't enjoy it. I thought I didn't think any line was particularly funny. There was that random guy and his daughter who stick around for the whole film, which I don't get it. I think it felt like as though the film originally was way under the time. So they said, what part can we pad out? They said, oh, we'll just have them in the cars for about half an hour. But yeah, there was glimpses of good things. Like I said, I did like the Velma and the Scarecrow sort of dynamic, but yeah, it needed a different backdrop because the car chase scene just was not it.
And Sophie.
See, I love a good car chase. Like, I get really excited for it. This was just flatline boring. If you're gonna do it, like the execution was not there. Like, you can make a car chase really exciting, like either like really exhilarating or like jokey. You can add some sort of positive element to it. Yeah, for this one, it took up like 2/3 of the movie and like nothing was happening. Like Dan said, like the random father and daughter duos there, like all these cars, they're all just talking like what 70 miles an hour, like that was really going to happen. And I just don't know what it was about. There was like no atmosphere, nothing to it, nothing like Halloween-y. And the one thing I hate doing when I'm watching a movie is turning and going on my phone. Like, I know as soon as I pick up my phone, I'm bored. Throughout the whole car chase scene, I was on my phone, and after that, I was still didn't miss anything, and I was still exactly where we were before the car chase scene. I will say another like redeeming part. I can't quite remember it. I haven't watched it in quite a while. There's a scene with like Daphne. I can't remember what happens, like a car situation. I really can't remember. It's so bad.
Daphne does have a couple of moments here. So, like you're saying, there's a moment in the car where she's like, "Oh, Elvira, like they're gonna come for you for being famous. Let me dress up as you." And so she starts dressing up as Elvira, but also I believe it's the Daphne and Elvira car that ends up saving everybody. They all kind of shift across into that one. I don't know if it's maybe something to do with that, which was your Daphne
So
moment.
Bill Nye's waste of time mystery machine didn't even save the day.
No, because he goes to answer the door to
Jesus
trick or treat.
Christ.
They all end up in Elvira's two-seater car, like the two random people from the family before. All the gang, Elvira.
See, that's what tears in my
I
eyes.
do quite like how the Scarecrow refused to help without his outfit. How he's like, "I want my bag back," and then he like appears as the Scarecrow
Oh
again.
yeah, that was
His
cool.
character's pretty decent. Like, there is some things that could have worked well, and he's one of them. But that scene just where he's there to help was good.
I can't quite remember it, but like there's a scene of Daphne trying to save whoever, and it's quite like like action scene, like quite a dangerous, like, oh, she could die if it did go wrong sort of thing. Like, I know it wouldn't, but like that kind of like adds a bit of something. But apart from that, it's absolutely nothing. I kind of get this movie to be like a Velma movie, like the way she's been like cast throughout the whole episode. Movie, sorry. Not a big fan of this iteration. However, I will say the whole Velma and Scarecrow scene, like earlier when Scooby and Shaggy with the pumpkins, was quite a redeeming scene. Like, I thought it was quite well. That was good. The execution wise, I thought like the scene, the setting, and how it went about, definitely added something to the movie out of everything. But yeah, those 2 points so far, like Scooby and Shaggy and Velma and the Scarecrow, 2 ticks so far. Yeah, 2 points.
Yeah, 2 somewhat reasonable ticks on a lot of perhaps nothing ticks and just a lot gone wrong, really. I'm looking forward to getting the overall review of this, but I kind of lose track here because I was kind of out of it at this point. There's some way they get away from the pumpkins, get to higher ground. Fred turns into like a caveman. Shaggy and Scooby go to Velma's mind palace, which turns out to be the mystery machine, which would make more sense to be Fred's mind palace. And then there's a giant pumpkin.
It's interesting with Velma's mind palace because, again, we're getting a lot of B Course Scooby Doo vibes from Daphne. But actually, obviously, if you guys remember, in the first episode of Be Cool Scooby Doo, we get such a cool Mind Palace section with Velma in the library that gets. I don't think they use that again for the rest of the series, unless I'm not mistaken. And I think that is the best Velma. The Velma I like seems to be just like gender swap Sherlock for some reason. The issue is here, for all I love the Mind Palace concept, I love the fact that Velma's got one. It's just kind of bland again. Like, it's just the mystery machine in space. I think it would have been cool if it was just either a more interesting setting, like somewhere that means something to Velma. It could have even been a bookshop. I think that would have been a cool little visual there. Or even just like it was in Be Cool Scooby-Doo, and like it sometimes is in Sherlock, just like writing that flashes before her in a funny way, or some like evidence that she can like move around.
Well,
like,
see,
that'd be cool.
This is what I've been dying to interrupt you to say. For me, the purpose of a mind palace is we want to see how they get into their end result, their conclusion, how they know who the villain is. And that's what you see in, again, going back to it, the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock. He's got the numbers moving around, he's got the words moving around, he's trying to drag different bits in to see if it fits and then moving them back out. It works so well. Whereas with this, I don't feel like we get any indication how she gets to where she does, because this is a big flaw with Velma.
Good. Seeing the mystery machine flying through the memories, I think, is good. It's just, I think she's the last member of the gang who would use the mystery machine as a mind palace.
Yeah.
Even in this movie, like Shaggy and Scooby use it to seek refuge at the start. Typically, Fred's the one that loves the mystery machine. Daphne's often associated with having owned the Mystery Machine. So out of all of them, that you seem to have a claim to the Mystery Machine. Like, when has Velma ever once even like shown to drive it, apart from when she nearly killed everyone before Music of the Vampire? That's kind of it. So I don't know.
I don't know. I do completely agree with you. But I think for me, this was a wasted opportunity because one of my biggest flaws with Velma has always been, other than the voice, how she gets to where she does when she's like, at the end, when she's like, and of course it was this person.
Da-da-da.
And this scene gave them the chance to show a genuine reason, a genuine, like, fantastic way of Velma's brain working that is the reason she's 20 steps ahead of everyone else. And I just feel like they wasted it. If they'd have done this right, it would have validated a lot of the times that people have questioned that. But I don't think it was impressive enough to justify why she is always so far ahead.
It was a good idea, though. If anyone's watching this that is working on current Scooby or going to work on Scooby, just watch BBC Sherlock and make that Velma. Please.
That would be good.
Like, at least for me, that's what I want. That would be my turn. I'd go for that. I might even switch sides.
Right, I know I keep going to Sophie last, but I'm going to go to Dan again. What did you think to the Mind Palace?
Building tension.
Yeah, building tension.
Yeah, it was another time. I totally forgot this was even a scene. Yeah, I was very confused. I kept every time watching this film, like you mentioned, Fred becoming the caveman. I kept thinking, have I missed something here? Why is this happening? The Mind Palace, like you say, was a wasted opportunity. I definitely think they could have done something a lot better. I do agree that sometimes it just comes out of nowhere when she suddenly knows who the villain is. I always think of Nowhere to Hide, where she ends up saying, oh, it has to be Helga, the housemaid. And obviously it isn't. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, well, yeah, well, Helga's a gymnast, so she wouldn't have needed the suction cups. And I'm like, so why did you think it was her? You can't just pretend like you did. So yeah, this would have been a good idea to sort of show how maybe sometimes she has like maybe different ideas going around and she's just waiting for the conclusion to sort of put the right ones together, but they didn't. I kept getting confused. Like, I was like, is this real or is this one of Bill Nye's like holograms or something? Like, yeah, there were so many times watching this film where I was trying to concentrate, but I kept getting the idea that I was missing something.
Yeah. To me, it's almost like have either of you seen Death in Paradise?
Yes.
So to me, it's kind of like when you try and work out one of them mysteries, you're missing a bit of information. But the issue is, but everyone in the story kind of knows this bit of information.
I know it.
Whereas here, the rest of the gang haven't got this bit of information. They're like the audience watching from home because she's got this extra bit of insight and no one has a clue where it's come from. That's how I've always seen the way that she works it out.
I like the lizard, though. They also, they're just surplus.
It seems like it misses something, and it was a really good opportunity to have tried to elaborate on that, I think. Sophie, we're going to come to you.
Where's the means and motive then?
How do you feel about the Mind Palace?
Just before, we've had all the car chase scene.
Yeah.
And like you say, 1 minute we're in the cars, the next we're on higher ground. Just imagine how good the scene would be, like them walking through the forest, whatever the hell they were talking about in the car, like in the spooky forest, like the actual scenery and the design of that forest or woods, whatever it was really spooky. Like, that was Halloween-y. So you could have just like scrapped the casting altogether. The Mind Palace. Two things on that. Number one, I've still got the bit of a cold shoulder towards Velma because of how mean and abrasive she was to Scooby and Shaggy at the beginning. So I'm kind of like still on the fence of her. And like you say, the Mind Palace is a perfect concept. However, the execution, which I keep saying about every point in this movie, just wasn't there. Like, it didn't sell it to me at all. Like, the idea to do it, and like you say, going through all these different directions where Velma's mind could have taken her, but they didn't do it. And I feel like it's a bit rushed near the end sort of thing. Like, it just came to this like penultimate scene at the end. And yeah, something that could have been really grand kind of like fell flat at the end of the day. So yeah, I didn't like it.
No, I can see all that. I agree. And I guess, again, I will admit, we're not far away from the point where I fell asleep when I was rewatching this last night. But I did see the unmasking, and it's the sheriff. And I like that. I like that we've got a character that's kind of been behind the scenes, that it is those Velma mind games and stuff. I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed her diving into the pumpkin. Like, this, I'm going to go as far as to say this might be my favourite iteration of Velma. There was just a lot done right here. And I don't think it's because Velma was any better than normal. I think the story certainly gave her a lot to work with that made her likable in a way that I've never actually liked her that much before. But I do like that. I do like that there was this pre-existing character, because I'm right in saying, wasn't I, that I think that, like, in Return to Zombie Island, you've got the sheriff kind of lurking in the background.
Yeah, he's just kind of there, like.
If they could have tied those three movies together better, that would have been brilliant. But to me, there wasn't enough link in those three movies to engage your brain that this is still part of those three movies. I think it's almost like everybody loved Mr. Incorporated. I don't think I've spoken to many people who can honestly say didn't really like it. And I think part of that was the continuity. And so I feel like maybe that's part of the reason that they thought this would work so well, but there just wasn't enough to signify. Out of all those DTVs out there, these three go together, and here's why. But I do like that kind of thought of a continuing theme, the mind games for Velma, and also, like, at this point, they've got to know it's a man in a mask. It always is. So for her to finally be like, oh yeah, that's it, and just dive into the pumpkin, I thought was good.
Yeah, I kind of I agree and disagree with the sheriff reveal, just because I think it was good, like you say, to the idea of a villain that's been behind the scenes all the time or for a couple of movies. I think on paper is great. It's just, to me, ridiculous that we get the sheriff reveal and then he says, but do you remember that time when I was this other character and you unmasked me in that dastardly way, and ever since then I've been out for revenge? And it's like, okay, so you've set him up for 2 movies, and yet now we're learning about a new scene in the 3rd one that would have tied it all together. Just have them, like, if that movie, what was he, like the swamp monster? He was something bizarre. But if that was the cold open to, like, Curse of the 13th Ghost or Return to Zombie Island, perfect, right? They've done that. At least they've done one full circle thing. But the fact that they had to invent a whole new scene for the 3rd one just so it seemed like it was the plan all along, which it actually was. They just didn't have a scene there, I think is bizarre. I think that was garbage, like complete garbage. Whoever, and this was Warner Brothers' fault, so I feel like I can't say this more. Whoever was in charge of the communication over at Warner Brothers, like, just give them the sack at this point. Like, they couldn't, what was it, Johnny English? Like, they couldn't hit a barn door with a banana. Like, just, it was crazy. Just, I don't know. It's just, I like the idea, and that's the issue. Like, there's so much about this movie where I love the ideas, and there's some scenes that I love. It's just tied all together. I'm not seeing it. It's like smearing Nutella on a pizza. I love Nutella and I love pizza together. I don't know.
See, to me, like, Warner Brothers is the epitome of, like, the equivalent of, like, a boyfriend who's been with his girlfriend for 10 years and just won't propose. They are so scared of committing to a concept fully. They get the general idea, they know what the person wants, and they just don't go all the way with it.
Warner Brothers must be
This
like
was a good-
Faulty Towers or something behind the scenes or something. Like,
It was a good concept to have 3 movies all tied together. Fantastic concept, and it could have been done brilliantly. But it's like what they've done with Velma's character for years, where we were just waiting for her to have that interaction that we finally get with Coco, which is why we were like, oh my gosh, when it happened, because Warner Brothers never commit to it. You get lots of things that allude to certain things or that suggest certain things, but they never commit to anything. And this is, I think, quite a good kind of example of that. They had a good concept, tying these 3 movies together. I think there's ways that we could have written that and it would have been done well. But because I think Warner Brothers don't commit, it was disjointed. Like, I'm going to say, and this is me making assumptions, and JayBee knows more about this, so he's probably going to correct me, that there was probably very few people that went across all 3 movies.
I don't think there was one. I don't think there was for all of those ones, except maybe it was Jeremy Adams.
Again, this is like a Warner Brothers commitment issue in my mind, because if you're wanting to tie 3 movies together, get a group that you like get some people you like and sign them for 3 movies to make sure they're all cohesive.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't cohesive in the slightest, to the point where, like we say, with this movie, it's like people working on it weren't speaking to each other because it just didn't line up. And so, like I said, my analogy is that Warner Brothers just won't commit, and that's why we end up with stuff like this. Dan, what about you? How do you feel about the unmasking? Because I realised we just kind of went on a full tangent there.
Well, this was definitely one thing I did not like. I remember not liking when I first watched it, simply because when I first started watching the film and they just randomly had the mystery machine back, I did think, okay, we're ignoring Return to Zombie Island. That's great. Only for at the end, apparently, no, we're not ignoring it. Which I'm not a fan of. But yeah, I agree. I just think like I say, it's a good concept, but I don't like it because all 3 films are so standalone. They work perfectly fine on their own. Well, Return to Zombie Island doesn't work at all, but they won't. Did you want link? Or if it feels like, you see, I feel like all these creatives just made their own film, and then one was like, oh no, by the way, just connect them somehow. I don't know, it's given me Star Wars sequel trilogy vibes where there was no plan and they just let anyone come in and write it, and then at the end we're like, oh no, this all has to tie together. Yeah, you say Warner Brothers, they should have stepped in. They should have at least had one person. There should have been like a co-writer on each of them. And I think, I know Scooby Doo, I know each mystery is different, but there should have been some similarity.
You know, just
Like,
shove an intern in there just to sit through all of them and just say, you just make sure this isn't completely disjointed.
I couldn't believe it when it turned out to be a trilogy. Like, when I first watched Halloween, I thought, wait, all of these connected? I was like, what? It didn't feel like something was set up. It didn't feel like I was waiting for it. It was like, oh, okay.
It doesn't seem like the same characters. It doesn't seem like the same animation style. Like you said, if somebody didn't tell me, I wouldn't really know what the heck was going on here. I wouldn't know that it was connected. It's because JayBee fills in the background stuff and is like, by the way, this is meant to be a trilogy. This is what's happening. I'm like, oh, okay, I see that now. And I do like the concept. It's just to have somebody go across all the movies would have made the world of difference. But I don't know if Warner Brothers were maybe scared that a concept didn't work and they needed to get rid of it. We know that they scrap Scooby movies, and that's a whole other issue in itself. But if they had to scrap it for whatever reason, that it wasn't like this is completely unfinished. And no, again, to me, it's just massive commitment issues. Sophie, how did you feel about the unmasking?
I agree with everything that you've said. The idea of a trilogy is really exciting. I love the idea that, you know, 3 separate movies, but then within all them, like, one big storyline. I think that's why people love Mystery Incorporated so much, because it just works. It's like really exciting and you always be engaged in it. This trilogy didn't work. I also, like I keep saying, I'm a broken record. Loads of great concepts, but the execution is just not there. I like the idea that the sheriff, like, was behind everything. However, compared to all 3 movies, it was such a random part. Like we said, like, all 3 movies, none of them feel like they're part of each other at all. Like, the animation style, the writing, like, nothing goes together. And like you said, Warner Brothers should have, if they were going to do a trilogy, get like the same people on all 3 movies to have like a coherent run. But it was also disjointed. You know, I mean, like you said, Dan, like, you didn't realise it was going to be part of the trilogy. You just thought it was some random standalone movie that had nothing to do with any of the 2 previous ones. So that was kind of a strange thing. I keep saying it's just so many good ideas, but the concept was just the execution was absolutely rubbish. I'm sorry, I just got nothing. I'm quite surprised. Like, I speak so badly about it because I know how good it could be, and like, the ideas, like, just talking amongst ourselves, we've talked about the ideas in this movie and how they could have been better, and with that alone, that would have made like several really good movies, not just like mashed them all into this really not even mediocre one. It is just a really bad movie, full stop.
Yeah, like, I think we need a proper mummy or daddy of like hands-on with Scooby, because it's like, no, different writers is a decent excuse on paper, But then when you consider like Mystery Incorporated, that it's rarely written by the same people twice in a row. Like you've got, say, Roger Eschbacher writing an episode, but there's continuity with the Planispheric Disc because we had like a Mitch Watson or a Victor Cook there going, oh, this is going to be the episode where this is set up that we're going to do in this time. Like there just needs to be a mummy or daddy that's, you know, overseeing all these productions. And I guess theoretically it should be Sam Register, but he's like tip top, so I don't think he's got time to fully hone in on all of them. But some type of Scooby Doo, Kevin Feige or James Gunn like showrunner type for the whole DTV.
But maybe this is why they didn't do a good reunion special, because things on Scooby at Warner Brothers, it's a revolving door. As soon as one person's in, they're back out and another one's in. There's no consistency. And any sign we have of it just gets thrown away. Like, for people that worked on Trick or Treat to be coming back to work on Holiday Haunt, fantastic, except all that's scrapped and we don't get that second movie with arguably what's been one of the best creatives that we've seen. Like, it's very disheartening to speak about Warner Brothers, quite honestly, a lot of the time. But we finished the plot. We're going into verdict. So, JayBee, we're starting with you. Overall thoughts, and is it a smash or a pass?
It is a tricky one because I think I echo a lot of what everyone seems to be saying about this. I think it's so easy to be harsh about this one because you see how good it could have been and you know that there's elements that are good. Because I'm quite heated. I got quite heated when I was talking about the Mind Palace, but best believe if we did a review about, say, the mystery map, like it's just not for me. It's different. It's not for me. That's the review type thing. I wouldn't be debating on this would be a better idea or that would be a better idea because it's just, it is what it is. But this one, it's got all the makings of stuff that I would love, from the Halloween vibe, the Sherlock dynamic with the Scarecrow. So much of it is just such a good idea. And actually, it released the same year of Scoob. It reminds me a lot of us Scoob. You know, good setup and decent conclusion, but the whole middle, it just forgets what it is. It's meant to be a Scooby Doo Halloween special, but we've got Fast and Furious, like Do Fast, Do Furious, like that type of dynamic going on. It's just a movie that is struggling with its own identity. I just don't know. It's such a difficult one because I'm weighing up if I like more than I didn't like. But ultimately, what sets Scoob up apart is it's one of its kind in terms of I am often in the mood to watch Scoob because I like the conclusion. It makes me emotional. This is not the worst. I think it's far from the worst DTV for me. But there's just so many others on the same shelf of DVDs, like and above and below, that I'd never choose to actively watch this again. The only saving grace I've got of this is because this car scene bores me. And what gives me solace, if there is someone out there that is too like homophobic and bigoted to watch Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, enjoy this movie. I hope it bores you to death. Like that's the best part about this for me. I just hope it bores people like that. So I'm gonna pass on it, but I wouldn't be against a remake of this, you know, just maybe with a bit more time. What about you, Milly?
I can agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think part of the reason you can get so angry about it is because you can see the potential. We'd love to see a trilogy. We'd love to, I guess, to see more of that Sherlock Velma kind of aspect, because it honestly is, I'm gonna say, perhaps one of the iterations of Velma I have enjoyed the most. But I think for all it had its high highs, it has ridiculously low lows. Again, some of the lowest lows we've seen, like I think the iteration of Daphne, like that huge car scene chase thing, that it's kind of like, I think it is the highest highs, the lowest lows, and there isn't anything in the middle of where you can actually find some kind of peace to enjoy what's meant to be entertaining as opposed to just a confusing headache. I'm gonna say that I don't think this is on the writers or the people that worked on the movie at all. I'm gonna say that Warner Brothers made this far too confusing, and it wasn't an easy feat for anybody working on this, because from what I can see, it was like, we want these 2 guest features, we want it to be this person, you can't make any of it real, make it sciencey, but make sure Elvira's not left out. And it all became too much to try and make anything comprehensive. So the writers were doing their best. They make great characters, like the Scarecrow and everything. It's just there were too many constraints on what they needed to achieve, I think, to actually make this the movie that they could have with a bit more freedom. And that's me reading into a lot and not from what anyone said, but that's very much the vibe I get from it.
Yeah, like you can be the best captain in the world, but if your boat isn't ship shape, you're only going one way, and that's down.
Yeah. And so I guess the criteria we normally use is for Smash or Pass is if I'd watch it again. And I actually would, because it's a Halloween special and there's stuff that I do really like. I don't think it deserves the title Happy Halloween in the slightest, because I wasn't feeling happy like Halloween. I wasn't feeling happy. And if I was going back to watch another Scooby movie for Halloween, it's not going to be this one. I think I'm breaking our formula because I'd watch it again, but it's a pass. It's really, really bad. Like, there's elements that are really bad. And I don't think the potential can outweigh some of the massive mistakes
Do you
that were
think it
made.
stank up the gaff?
I'm doing well to like not swear about it, to be honest. Like, it was genuinely atrocious. I hate what they did to Daphne, and I hate the car sequence, and nothing can redeem it. Dan, how about you? Smash your pants.
Yeah, I love how before we started this, we thought it was going to be like everyone with different opinions, and we kind of all.
Yeah,
of
we were
thought that
convinced that me and you were going to smash this one, and Sophie and JayBee were going to say pass.
Honestly, when I rewatched it this morning, I was genuinely surprised at how much I didn't really particularly enjoy it. Like, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch my original review from 3 years ago, because I remember being a lot more positive. Like, I was genuinely thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to enjoy this. But yeah, it just, after the first part, it doesn't feel like a Halloween special, which, like I've said, I hate that about any like Halloween or Christmas themed thing. Like, it has to revolve around that holiday. And this didn't. I hated the conclusion. I hated the sheriff. I hated the fact that he wasn't, like, he should have been someone who we knew. Either should have been someone from a cold open, or at least one of the classic villains like Frank and Creepy did. I hated the explanation of the mystery. Like, when they showed the old woman being eaten by the pumpkin, and then they took off her glasses and hair and put it on the pumpkin so it looked as though she turned into one. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I know it's a cartoon, but like, no, this is stupid. Yeah, it felt like, even right at the very end where they go to that sort of Halloween party where people are dressed up, it still didn't feel very Halloweeny. I just thought really, it's not even like there's better Halloween films, but there's even just better Halloween specials. The What's New Scooby Doo Halloween special is better. The Spooky Scarecrow is better. Even something like the Hassel in Dracula's Castle is better. Rewatching it, I couldn't believe how much I wasn't particularly enjoying it. And so I think I agree with you. I think I would watch it again, but purely because it's a Halloween special. But I'm gonna have to give it a pass, because I just think there's better Halloween stuff. I think most other Halloween stuff involving Scooby is better. So I would recommend you watch that rather than this.
Okay, so far we've got a unanimous verdict. And that just leaves Sophie. And I will admit I've been waiting for this. So Sophie, tell us your true and honest thoughts about this movie, and if it's a smash or pass.
I'm not going to waffle on for like 10 hours straight, because I could do that. I agree again with everything you said. Broken record. So many good ideas. The execution is what we'd call swamp gas. Like, there's like nothing to it. Yes, I could be effing and blinding about this movie all day long, but I'll keep it nice and clean. I got nothing to say about it. After the end of watching the movie, I was deflated. Like, there was nothing in me that thought I enjoyed any of it. Even the redeemable parts weren't that redeemable. Like, I could take it or leave it. Like, if I'd never seen this movie, I'd be way better off, sort of thing. Like you say, I won't keep repeating, like the problem with Warner Brothers and like everyone working on it, and like the miscommunication. You see, as a diehard Scooby fan, you kind of like feel compelled to watch it on Halloween because it's a Halloween movie. But like Dan said, it doesn't really feel Halloweeny at all. Like the beginning, you know, is all set up and then it doesn't go anywhere. You know, you've got the pumpkin villains, like, you know, in the mix as well. But you've also got that sort of feeling in Witch's Ghost, and that's not necessarily a Halloween movie, but I'm not even going to compare the two because I think we all agree that Witch's Ghost is like beyond anything compared to Happy Halloween is. And you know, you'd be watching Witch's Ghost instead of Happy Halloween. And you know, when it did come out, I did watch it, you know, last year, but I'm not going to be watching it this year because it is the most boring movie I've ever enjoyed in my life. And I'm not being dramatic. All the other Scooby Halloween specials, they're just above anything that this movie is. And I know that sounds really harsh, and I could be saying a lot more like worse things about it, and I can't keep, you know, putting it into the ground as much as I can. But I know, and we know how good Scooby can be, and this just isn't it, and it is a total letdown. And you know, it hasn't picked up since 2018, like the whole Scooby, like, you know, everything that Warner Bros. Is knocking out. And I know that sounds really bad and negative, but even if he were to have like a dry spell and come back fighting like with Zombie Island did, that's what I'm hoping for, because the way that we're at the moment is not good, and Happy Halloween didn't sell me at all. Like, I could keep going on in circles saying all the flaws in this movie, but I won't. But it's an absolute pass. Like, I can't, you know. Another thing is, if people like say, oh, what do you recommend Scooby-wise to watch? But I can't say Happy Halloween, because if they watch it, they'll think Scooby's like the worst cartoon in the whole entire world, which it's not. We love him. We know he's a really good, like, the whole thing, the franchise is amazing, and this movie doesn't show for that. Therefore, we'll forget about it.
I mean, I have to agree with Sophie. You can't compare this to the Witch's Ghost. The Witch's Ghost gave us the Hex Girls. This gave us the Mystery Machine X. It doesn't really compare. So yeah, I think, you know, more than justified in, I think, exactly what everyone said. It's unanimous. If we're disagreeing, if we're all agreeing that this is that level, it must be.
Yeah, like I'm just, yeah, it's an interesting one. It definitely is an interesting one. I've probably said a bit too much, but see, here's the thing. I feel like I was both the harshest and the nicest about this movie, because I've actively said, you there, this named person, your time here has expired. But then I've also praised it a lot. It is an interesting one, though.
It's what you're saying, though. Like, I'm the type of person that says more when they still care. When I don't care, I don't say anything. And this movie isn't it's nothing, and it's a pass because it's just nothing. It's a pass because there was so much they could have done. And it's not that it was all bad. It like, we are invested because there was, I think, glimmers of hope. So it's not like this is the worst thing they've ever done. It's just there was things that could have been improved.
Like I say, I'm just glad that I can watch something like Trick or Treat Scooby Doo without getting pressed about Velma and Coco, instead of having to like be forced to watch something like this. Like, I'm very happy that I'm a liberated modern man, because if I wasn't, I think I would have, I can't say what I would do, but unalived myself.
I must really agree with Sophie on something that she was saying, and I know Dan said it as well. The Halloween thing. If this movie wasn't called Happy Halloween, who is knowing that this is Halloween? We were told it in the title. Call this movie something else, and nobody's watching it every Halloween. But because it's got that name, it's given that privilege.
That's a good point. It is a good point. See, it's just weird. I'm kind of used to not really expecting too much from the themes. I think it's Doctor Who conditioning, because quite a lot of the newer Christmas specials don't really have too much to do with Christmas. But then I think when it has a good conclusion, that's all I care about. Like, that one that Capaldi did, which was his last one, was nothing to do with Christmas until the end. But then it was iconic Christmas, and that was like, okay, you've got me. So if this just had a nice Halloweeny ending or something, I think I would have forgiven it a bit more. But it's just fluff. So we've trashed the production of this movie. We've trashed
Oh,
the
God.
direction of this movie.
I don't like where this is going.
We've trashed the writing of this movie.
Eh.
So this week's interview is going to be with the producer, director, and writer, Maxwell Atoms. Now, I know that we've kind of been up and down about this movie. There's definitely elements that we have liked and not liked. But also, one thing that I was really excited to talk to Maxwell Atoms about was his role as the creator of Billy and Mandy, which I must say is one of the most iconic shows from my childhood. There's so many episodes that to this day are still ingrained within my memory that I really do feel like Warner Brothers must have interfered in some way with this movie, because Billy and Mandy, everything about that series I love. And so it was an absolute pleasure to talk to Maxwell about that series in the interview as well. So that will be premiering. See,
Tomorrow
the
at
clocks
10.
do go back at some point soon, don't they?
Oh,
So
yeah, that's maybe this weekend.
I
This
don't
week.
know
Yeah,
when
Sunday
we-
morning.
Oh,
Sunday at 2 a.m.
Sunday. So this will
Okay, so
still
it doesn't
be
affect the interview.
10 p.m. BST on Saturday, which is absolutely incredible. You know, ups and downs with this movie, but definitely the interview was one of the special ones. It's also got the whole core four in it, the whole crew's back, and it was actually the first one we recorded, so we were probably a lot more Halloweeny then as well. So yeah, I guess just getting the process of wrapping things up. Sophie, where can people find you on the internet?
Yep, you can find me on Instagram at Scooby Doo for life.
And Dan, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at danfaz94. And if you want to listen to my original review, you can find my YouTube channel. I think it's just Dan Farrell, but it'll be a lot more of a positive review than this one was. So if
It's
that
also
interests
in
you,
our
you can check that
sub box
out.
as well, which is
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah, it's in our sub box, so you can check that out. I don't know what else is in the sub box. There's a few people there. I don't know. Maybe Millie, you can check for me. But if you do want to hear from us, you can find our link tree in the description down below with all of our good links there. No spicy content though, I'm sorry to say, but maybe that'll be coming if we ever run out of finance. Who knows? Like, never say never. But happy Halloween to everyone. Comment down below if you're going to be trick or treating, if you're going to be watching any scary, spooky movies, and what you think about them. So yeah, happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time.